Hello and welcome to the Fear and Anxiety Breakthrough Fear and Anxiety webinar. My name is Friedemann, Dr. Friedemann Schaub, and I wanted to thank you for taking the time to learn more about fear and anxiety and this way already start to find your fear and anxiety solution. Now, for many of you, fear and anxiety has been probably a companion that was rather unwanted. Some of you may have felt that they were trapped in fear and anxiety for a long time, abused, attacked, mistreated. And some of you may have just felt that fear and anxiety is the fate that you have to work with and live with for the rest of your life. Now, today, I would like you to face your fears, which is not really in that sense that it's usually used, which is doing the opposite of what you're afraid of. And basically, if you're afraid of heights, you do your bungee jumping. If you're afraid of presentations, you join a club where you just practice standing in front of a crowd. No, facing your fears that I would like you to experience today is to learn to know what the face of your fear really is. Who is creating inside of you fear and anxiety? What is the source of it, and how can you heal that source, those root causes that we're going to together discover today? Now, for this to happen, I have some slides and I have to switch back and forth, so please bear with me with that. For this to happen, so that we can really demystify a little bit the ideas that we have been told or that we have told ourselves about fear and anxiety. For us to really change our perspective on fear and anxiety, we have to obviously open our mind. And that is something that, we all know, opening the mind is very important, especially when it comes to resolving a problem, just like Einstein said. So today I would like to answer some of those most pressing questions of fear and anxiety, some of those questions that really have been, maybe on your mind or the mind of those that you really have been caring about for a long time, that have been struggling with fear and anxiety. But to get started, to get you in the mood of fear and anxiety, I would like you just to take a pen and paper and write down a few of your fears and anxieties, just to know already this is actually what I'm really dealing with. Write down 3 fear and anxiety triggers, how those triggers make you feel. This is what the slide is saying here. And then also write down how you usually respond to those triggers. Maybe you have a trigger where in front of people that you don't know, or when you think about the future or the circumstances you're in, those are things that really scare you. Then you feel insecure, doubtful, worried, your mind is racing. And how do you respond to those triggers? Maybe you try to avoid them. Maybe you just put the head in the sand and procrastinate. Maybe you work really harder or overthink and think about all the possible things that can go wrong or everything that you can do to make the situation better. So just write down your 3 top that just come to your mind, anxiety triggers. Great. Now, I just let you jump right in there because it is important for us to really notice that we can actually create anxiety just by thinking about it, which later on will even make more sense when I explain it. But you may think, well, this guy just makes me scared. The first 5 minutes of this talk, who is he and what makes him the expert? Well, what makes me the expert is that I have been struggling with fear and anxiety for a long, long time, starting probably at the age of 5 when I fell in the pool and almost drowned. The interesting thing about this was, and I actually remember it as one of my first memories, that when I was on the side of the pool, sitting in a chair, whipping back and forth, finding it hilarious that the chair actually was starting to move stronger and stronger, that when I fell into the pool, I was so shocked that in that moment, I couldn't actually swim, I couldn't scream, I just sank down to the ground and I was holding on to that chair for dear life and literally froze with panic. And thank God my sister heard the plunge and she was a little older, so she and her friend jumped in and pulled me out. But that certainly was one of the first time that it appeared that the world wasn't that safe or having fun wasn't that safe. Later on in life, I was becoming more and more aware of the anxiety of my parents. And some of you may have felt that too, when your environment, when your mother or your father are stressed or anxious, you feel it, you feel the tension and you somehow pick it up. And my parents were both from the World War II generation. And so they certainly had this fear of the shoe gonna drop, something bad's gonna happen, or that somehow they're gonna lose everything again, just like they did during World War II. And for me, this of course felt like when the adults are anxious, something really must be scary, something really must be wrong with the world. And then plus I was told that I'm not that smart and that I'm a late bloomer, and in order to succeed, I have to really work hard. And all of this together created for me a lot of internal anxiety that at times made me even act obsessively, where I really just did things that I thought, if I'm gonna do this, like straightening a carpet or making sure that all the faucets are closed, that then everything's gonna be okay. Some of you may be able to relate to that. Those kind of really desperate attempts as a child to somehow gain control over a life, a world that seems uncontrollable, were driven by anxiety. And unfortunately, my parents weren't able to help me with the anxiety besides giving me some medication. And at some point, I accepted the anxiety as a part of who I was. In fact, I thought even that maybe I need the anxiety to get the edge, to be better in school, to reach my goals. And lo and behold, it became just a not very liked companion that was with me for most of my early teens and 20s until I went into cardiology. And this is what I specialized in medicine. And there I saw that anxiety actually is also something that can be detrimental to us. I saw a lot of people that were so stressed and so anxious, not only after they had a heart attack or a stroke, but before. They told me stories of enormous pressure with family or their work, and that they believed that that had something to do with the onset of their physical problems. Now, during that time and in that department, we didn't really believe, or at least most of us didn't believe, that there is really anything we can do. And so all we could do is just listen, nod, and prescribe some medication to treat the symptoms. But really, there wasn't anything we were equipped to or had the time to help people to release the stress or release the fear of having another heart problem. And lo and behold, 6 months later, most of them came back with some issues that were either the same as before or issues that were new, but still related to stress and anxiety. At some point, it just felt to me that I need to make a shift in my career, because just helping people to resolve the symptoms, patching them up, wasn't really enough? What if fear and anxiety are really the main reason for why we get sick? What if stress is really what suppresses our immune system and makes us more susceptible to autoimmune diseases, cancer, infections, and so on? Wouldn't it be actually then the best thing to learn how to overcome fear and anxiety? Now, that is something I certainly got passionate about, and especially passionate about once I did a little detour into molecular biology. Now, molecular biology doesn't necessarily teach you anything about stress, but what it teaches you is that we have infinite potential inside. And what I found so fascinating about molecular biology is to find that there is wisdom inside of us. There is a wisdom that makes it possible that trillions of cells work together in harmony, doing their job and keeping us healthy and alive for decades. And for me, it was just the question, what is that? What is actually the wisdom inside of us? And if there is an innate knowledge on how to stay healthy and be healthy, wouldn't it be great if we could access this knowledge and access this potential within? And this is how I got interested in the mind-body connection, in the deeper parts of the mind. And this is also how I learned to overcome my own fear and anxiety. And this is a journey that I went through and that I would like you to join me on today. So when you looked at your fear and anxiety list on what actually are the three main triggers right now that come to mind that causes you fear and anxiety, you probably also remember how difficult it is at times to deal with fear and anxiety, how challenging it can be. Now, most people that I work with, they ask me just 4 questions about fear and anxiety that seem the most nagging ones. First of all, why is it such a challenge to have fear and anxiety? Why is it so difficult for us to really deal with these emotions? Then where do these emotions come from? How can you prevent an anxiety attack, and how can you heal your fear and anxiety on a deeper level? So these are the questions that I want to explore with you today. And these are the questions I'm always asked. So what can we do to really heal ourselves on a deeper level? So the answer to the first question is, why is fear and anxiety so difficult, is fairly simple. Fear and anxiety is sorry, I have to do the sharing again. Fear and anxiety is so difficult because we all know it can make us feel attacked and powerless. We wake up one morning and boom, the anxiety is staring us in the face. We are in a situation where we, maybe just driving along on the highway and all of a sudden we feel a panic attack overcoming us and we have to stop and we cannot drive anymore. And when we do feel fearful and anxious, we of course have a sense of powerlessness because our mind is racing, we feel overwhelmed, our body is shaking, and we really don't know what to do. That, and that it doesn't really make sense what we feel, is a second challenge. How many of you have been maybe at a talk and you wanted to speak in front of your colleagues, all good people, all people that you had a beer with on Friday nights, and then you stand up during that meeting at work and you freeze and you breathe fast and you just feel like, oh my God, I don't know what to say and I don't know these people, and you get really anxious. It doesn't make sense. You shouldn't be anxious. Or you wake up on a Sunday morning and everything is peaceful. The kids are sleeping, your spouse is next to you, breathing normally, sun is shining, and for some reason you worry. For some reason you just feel like there is this inner turmoil of fear and anxiety inside of you, and you just don't know why. And then you don't know what to do, which is another big problem with fear and anxiety, because when we are feeling hungry, we know we need to eat. When we feel tired, well, we take a nap. When we feel pain, we are usually trying to find out where the pain comes from, and we take a pain medicine. But when we are anxious, we often don't know what to do. We feel just paralyzed by the emotion. And usually what we do is we focus on the outside. We look at the outside trying to figure out what can be the reason for this fear and anxiety. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was anxious, I certainly was vigilant. I was always looking for anything on the outside that potentially could judge me or reject me, or any potential failure that could happen. And so for me, my mode of somehow compensating for the anxiety was just to get into a certain kind of frenzy and become very controlling and micromanaging. My mother, for example, when she was anxious, she was more the person who was silently worrying, but then also trying to please everyone, trying to make sure that everyone somehow is okay with her, taken care of. That somehow made her feel better, even if it meant that she actually was never really getting enough. And so you may have also a pattern that you have developed in response to anxiety. Maybe you have a pattern when you're anxious that you procrastinate, or maybe your pattern when you're anxious is that you become frustrated and angry and you yell at the kids. Or maybe you have the pattern when you're anxious that you feel like you need to go out there and achieve more and reach more goals and be more successful. A client of mine who really had everything, who was actually, one of the most blessed people, according to his own admission. He had 2 children, he had a fantastic job, a beautiful wife, he worked on a tropical island, he just got a promotion. He just felt like, well, I actually had won the lottery ticket of life, and unfortunately, that was the worst time in his life, because all he felt was anxiety. Every day was a struggle. Going to work was for him just pure war with himself, because a part of him just didn't want to get out of bed. He became more and more depressed, more and more depleted. And when he got to doctors, they just told him that they don't know really what causes anxiety. All they can do for him is to basically treat him with medication, which unfortunately in his case didn't really work because the side effects made the whole situation for him worse. So when he came to me, he was pretty much at his wit's ends, and he felt that he believed that either there was something wrong with his genes, or his hardwiring wasn't really set right, or that he just had to live with that fate of anxiety, with that dark cloud that was hanging over him. And that's pretty much how he would have to go through life until the last day. And he had already somehow surrendered and settled in, although he admitted that at times he was even thinking about ending his life because the anxiety was just too overwhelming and the depression was making life just too hard to go through. Now, the interesting thing is that once he actually discovered where his anxiety came from and what it actually meant on a deeper level, within just a few sessions, his whole perspective and picture has changed. And now he is actually a person who does enjoy life, who sees the anxiety no longer as something to be afraid of. And he does understand when he is anxious, what he needs to do and how he needs to approach it. And what he understood is that in order to really find the solution for anxiety, it is no longer about what he used to do, which was going on the outside and trying to figure out what he should avoid or control, but instead that he needed to go inside and to find out really internally what there is for him to change. And this is what I would like you to also experience now. So why don't you take your hands on your lap, one hand on the left, the other on the right, the palms are facing up. And I would like you just to let your eyes fall closed And think for a moment, as you are in this place, about a really happy thought, something that you would say you have recently experienced that brought you joy. Maybe during Thanksgiving. Maybe it was a vacation this summer. A moment of happiness. Maybe it was the first cry of your firstborn. Whatever it is that makes you happy, think about happiness. Think about that, what brings you joy. And then imagine that you can bring this energy of joy into your right hand. Just projecting it into your right hand. Just notice how your right hand feels. It may feel light, it may feel, jumping for joy, it may feel warm, open. Just notice if you put your happiness into your right hand, what that feels like. And then take a deep breath in and exhale. And then think about anxiety. Something that you wrote on your list. The last time you felt anxious. And just notice what you notice there, what you feel there. Project this anxiety onto your left hand. Imagine even that you could give your anxiety a face, a shape. Your left hand may feel heavy. It may feel darker. It may feel clenched and tight. Your left hand may actually carry a little monster, a little devil. Just notice how you relate to your anxiety. And then take another deep breath in. And focus on the right hand again, on the happy hand. Just shift the energy back to the happiness. Go back into that moment where you really felt that joy. And then take another deep breath in. Rub your hands together and you can open your eyes. Now, this exercise has only one reason to really, one thing that it really wants to show you, which is that we are actually creating our emotions. Well, duh, you think you knew that. But really, because when we feel anxious, we don't necessarily feel that we are creating the emotions ourselves. We are actually feeling that the emotions are done to us, that they're coming from somewhere inside, or maybe from somewhere even outside, as I said, attacking us. But when you are able to really create happiness moment and anxiety moment at will, you know that you do have the power to create your emotions. But creating emotions is not the work of the intellect, which is why anxiety often doesn't make sense, and which is why anxiety often also cannot really be talked out of with rational thoughts. I mean, we all tried it. When we were anxious, we told ourselves, no, there is no reason, everything is fine. And we listed 5 things that we thought rationally would make sense in that moment. But somehow the anxiety still was there with all the great reasons we had not to be anxious. Why? Because where the anxiety comes from doesn't really care about logic and reasoning. Where the anxiety comes from is from that deeper part of our mind. And that deeper part of our mind is the subconscious mind. And it's really the subconscious mind that we need to work with and that we need to learn to understand in order to heal and overcome the anxiety. Now, some of you may have heard about the subconscious mind. Some of you may actually know a lot about it. And some of you may have not such a good thought, or the subconscious mind may not have a great reputation in your mind because it feels ominous. That's the source of my nightmare. That's the reason why Although I want to lose weight, I still find a pint of vanilla ice cream in the shopping cart, or never could quit smoking. And the subconscious has a bad rep in many ways, but ultimately the subconscious is really the most powerful part of our mind. And here is why. Let me show you why I love the subconscious mind. Oops, 1 second. This is too fast. The subconscious mind is actually something that I wanted to show you a slide, but I decided not to. So I'll let you let me tell you a little bit about subconscious mind without slide. The subconscious mind is that deeper part of the mind. Some people say it's like the mind is like the iceberg, and the conscious mind is that little tiny tip on top, and the subconscious mind is that bigger part underneath. The subconscious mind is a creator of our emotions. And as I just mentioned, emotions are often just pure, we call them visceral. They don't really make sense, but they just show up, and we enjoy them or we detest them. But often they seem very much out of our control. Now, the subconscious mind is also the part of our mind that holds most of our memories. So if I would ask you to quickly think about the room you grew up in, the bedroom that you were in as a child, just think about how it was furnished, where the window was, where the bed was. You could remember all those things, even though you haven't thought about them maybe for a long time. Well, the reason why you can remember it is that it is stored in the subconscious mind, and it only gets basically pulled out, that memory, if you ask for it, if you ask for the access to this memory. Our conscious mind would be completely overwhelmed if it would have to hold all the memories. And so it is all stored in the subconscious, and some memories are stored in the subconscious so deeply, like in a big black bag, to protect us. You know, that's when people don't remember that they were actually going through a trauma. After an accident, there's just a blackout. They have amnesia. They don't remember that the accident actually happened. Or often people that were abused during childhood, they don't have the memory, but somehow, maybe during a meditation or during a treatment, like acupuncture treatment or a massage, a physical memory comes up, which then also brings up a memory of what happened. And so it seems like the subconscious also protects us from certain memories that seem overwhelming until we are actually ready to have those memories and deal with those memories. The subconscious is also responsible for most of our body functions. Just if I would ask you to blow your cheeks or maybe smile, I mean, it's very simple, but you're using a lot of muscles that automatically contract and flex, and you don't do this consciously. You give a command consciously, this is what I want to do, but then the subconscious takes that command and really delivers it to our body, which is why the mind-body connection really requires the work with the subconscious mind to be effective. And the subconscious mind is responsible for most of our beliefs and our habits. You know, often when I'm quite, busy and distracted, I get out of the shower and don't remember, did I actually wash my hair or not? But someone was washing the hair, or you drive to work and you wonder while you're thinking about, what happens at work, or maybe what you talked about at dinner last night, who is actually driving the car? Who is stopping at the red light? Who is making sure that there is no accident? These things happen so automatically and subconsciously that people say that 75% of our daily activities are actually run by the subconscious mind. So the subconscious is very powerful, and it has, in general, two main agendas for us. One agenda is to make us happy, and the other agenda is to protect us. Now, since the subconscious is already there, active, early on in our development, it will always first look for our survival, always first say, okay, I want to make sure that you're okay before it looks for happiness. And that's crucial for understanding where fear and anxiety comes from, because fear and anxiety ultimately are learned behaviors on a subconscious level. Now, to illustrate this more, one of the things the subconscious also does is it actually filters most of our information, because let's think about it. You are in a, say you are in the bus and you go to work and you actually have to focus on something that you haven't finished yet, but there are all these people talking around you. There's maybe a radio on, there's all this stuff flying by the window, and you still need to focus on your presentation. So your subconscious actually filters it all out to allow you to only focus on that what's important to you. And those filters are the thoughts, inner conflicts, we're going to get to this in a moment, also the emotions that we have, and the limiting beliefs. Now, this sounds very negative. Well, when it comes to anxiety, it is actually a little bit negative, right? Because these filters are also the root causes of your anxiety. What do I mean with that? Let's say you are like my parents were, really afraid of always losing everything. And so you get a letter in the mail, maybe it's a letter from our friends at the IRS, and immediately you have thoughts that say, oh my God, what could that be? And those thoughts take that letter and distort it in some kind of a catastrophe where you already see yourself, oh, they want more money from me. And you see yourself losing all that what you have so hard worked for. And you see yourself in a place where you live under a bridge. So you catastrophize, which is part of what these filters do. And then you get anxious, your physiology changes, you react maybe by, just running around, calling a friend, or maybe just trying to put this letter away and not even opening it. Whatever those patterns are, you try to deal with the anxiety without necessarily even knowing what it's all about. Now, we all have those filters, and I'm sure you had those filters as well. I mean, you may have already on your list things that you would say, well, my anxiety, for example, comes a lot about the what ifs. When I'm not hearing from my kids as they are in school, or as they're leaving school, or they're 30 minutes late, immediately my anxiety says they're in an accident, something bad happened. And so the mind creates then a movie, a horror movie, and we are living in that reality as if it really happened. Now, why do we have those filters, and what do they actually do for us? Is it really something positive to have these subconscious filters that somehow distort our reality or also delete important information? Like, for example, a friend of mine, it's actually a funny story. He told me recently, he is a person you would say he's big, he's strong, he is afraid of nothing but of one thing, which is to be ill. Whenever it is about anything with his body, he is freaking out. Little tiny dots are cancer. When he has a headache, he knows he has a stroke. He's the one who always runs to the emergency room whenever something happens, simply because of that fear. Now, one day he came back from work, he got comfortable, changed his pants, and he discovered that his legs were all blue. And he freaked out. He called his doctor and he said, my legs are all blue and I think they're even swollen and they look really strange, and what's going on? And so the doctor said, well, this can be a whole bunch of things, but I think this could be also something like a lymphoma or a leukemia, something that really is serious. You better go to the emergency room. Well, this was, of course, just putting fuel to his anxiety, and he raced to the emergency room and arrived there, pulled his pants down as soon as he was in the cabin, and the nurse that took him in, of course, looked surprised at his legs, then looked at him and said, are these jeans that you were wearing new? Did you ever wash them? Well, he realized actually that he never washed them. And for some reason, they must be a little cheaper because when it was raining, they stained on his legs. And what he actually saw was a stain of color of that jeans. Now, if he would have stopped and not got into panic, if these subconscious filters would have not created a distorted view and deleted important information about, well, isn't it interesting that where he had his underwear on, there wasn't any blue, then he would have figured it out earlier. But our subconscious does that. It creates those filters for the reason to protect us. Because the subconscious believes in order to be safe, we need to look out for special things, for things that can be dangerous. A frown of the boss can be interpreted as it's about me and I'm gonna get fired. Maybe making one mistake in a test means like, oh, I knew it, I'm stupid, I will never really amount to anything. So these kind of filters are taking the information in and they're making it bigger in order to get us into the anxiety patterns, into the survival patterns that at some point were useful to make us survive. Now, many of you would say, well, I can actually remember that even as a child, even early on, I had these kind of worries and I had these kind of fears and I had these kind of anxiety patterns. I can actually imagine where they come from. So you can actually see that the subconscious early on makes up its mind. This is who you are in the world, and this is what the world is about. So let's deal with it and let's try to survive it. Now, obviously, in order to change our view on the world and to change the anxiety problem, the best thing we can do is to actually deal with those anxiety filters, to remove those filters, to make sure that those filters are actually no longer distorting our reality, deleting important information, or generalizing everything, because that's another way these filters operate. If one time you had pain, one time you got rejected, those filters may say, it's going to happen every time. Nobody likes you. All the people find you're not this or that. So that's also, again, one of those filter functions we want to change. And we want to ideally open up the subconscious mind to a reality that is different to how we grew up. Now, how do we do this? Let me get back to a slide here. These are the 4 patterns that I just described that most people fall into. The survival pattern, we can call them anxiety patterns, that as a result of those filters, people use subconsciously to make it through life. So here's the avoider who basically says, I don't want to ever have anyone hurt me. These people are often getting just becoming invisible or become procrastinators. Often the people that feel that they are the victims of life, victims of their circumstances, are in such an avoider pattern. The pleasers are the people that usually try to be there, the best friend, the caretaker, the supporter of everyone else. Pleasers can also be chameleons that blend in and just try to fit in, to somehow make sure no one is really against you. And there is the lover type that is basically that archetype of the pleaser that is looking for that one person who will make everything better, that one person who makes you feel safe, valuable, and worthy. And that person is with all effort looked out for. And once that person is found, or at least we believe that person is found, no one else matters, including ourselves. All of that also comes from that anxiety pattern of not feeling really belonging or not feeling good enough. Then there is the achiever, which are the overachievers, the people that are heroes, the people who want to rescue others. And then the controllers. And controllers can be not only the people that are more angry or authoritarian, but also the people that are more like living like rebels or saying it's all about me and I just gonna live the way I want to live, often also out of the avoidance of wanting to get judged or hurt or criticized. And I can imagine when you're looking at your piece of paper where you wrote down what you actually are afraid of and how you feel and maybe even react to it, that you can find that you either act like an avoider or you act like an achiever. Maybe you feel like that you have to control your circumstances or please others. Just knowing about those patterns can already help you to later on resolve them, because then you know these are driven by something inside of me, a part of my subconscious mind that obviously still believes that's the only way to survive. Now, what I would like us to do is to actually get a little bit deeper, because now you know the theory. Now you know, okay, there is actually a reason why I'm anxious. And that reason is not that I'm screwed up or that I'm weak or flawed. That reason is that I'm still running some old patterns, some survival programs that started somewhere way back. And I want to resolve those patterns. And how can we do that? Now, I want to introduce you to two things on a subconscious level. And for that to happen, I would like to just share with you how to connect with the subconscious mind, because the subconscious mind is not without our reach. It can easily be talked to, communicated with, if we understand the language of the subconscious mind. And the language of the subconscious mind is not words or reasoning. As I talked about, the language of the subconscious mind are emotions themselves, sensations, and internal images, things that you can imagine. The subconscious is very creative itself. This is where our dreams come from. And how many of us had dreams that are just incredibly imaginative and creative? I mean, I regularly talk to whales in dreams or fly. I mean, it's quite a world there. And so there is something about the subconscious mind that resonates when we imagine things, and it responds to this. So for us to access the subconscious mind, we want to imagine right now how to get there. We want to imagine right now to access the subconscious mind. Now, the second thing that is important about the subconscious mind to know when we access it, it needs leadership. Now that's kind of surprising, because often we feel like, well, it operates over there and I'm over here and we are just banging heads. But the subconscious mind is actually a very faithful servant, and it just does what it has been doing until it gets new direction, until someone tells the subconscious mind, that's not working any longer, let's do something else. So the subconscious is very open to learn, very willing to get new information, but it needs to get this information not only one time, it needs it with a certain consistency, and it certainly needs it also with a certain emotional impact. So this is where literally the heart comes in. We cannot overcome and heal the subconscious root causes of fear and anxiety without involving our heart. So what I would like you to do is just to close your eyes again and take a few nice breaths in and out. Good. And then just imagine for a moment that you're able to stand in front of a big door. Visualize that door. And imagine that you can actually open that door because you have the key that can open it. And as you are opening that door, you can actually step inside a beautiful room. And in that room, you can find a round pool. A pool that is filled with warm, soft, comfortable water. Go into that pool and now feel the water just rising along your legs as you immerse yourself in it. Feel that water rising up to your belly button, to the point where you feel so comfortable because it's warm, it's cozy, that you can actually lean back and relax. And you can let yourself simply go back and float. Floating on your back, floating with ease. Just let it happen. And at some point, you're going to feel lighter and lighter. In fact, you feel so light and so weightless that you can actually float right out of your body and up into the air. And you can float higher and higher and higher, and you can float all the way up there, way up there, all the way up there to a very special place from where you can actually look down and you can clearly see the path of your life. You can see past, present, and future beautifully lined up there. And I would like you just to take the index finger of your right hand and point into the direction of the past. Is the past to the left? Is it to the right? Is it in front of you? Is it behind you? Where is the past? And then look into the direction of the future. Where is the future? Behind you, in front of you, where is the future? Good. And as you're looking into the past, I would like you just to remember a time way back. Remember a time when you actually had early on anxiety. Just let yourself go back in time to a moment where you can imagine you were sitting in that bedroom by yourself and you were anxious. Maybe your parents had been fighting. Maybe there was this mean kid in school that was taunting you. Maybe you felt that somehow the world is not safe because you watched something in the news. Maybe you just didn't feel like that you belonged in the family because everyone seemed to be so different. Just allow yourself to go back in time and feel the feelings of who you were at that time. Look through the eyes of this younger self. Feel the emotions. Feel the body of this younger self. And just notice how maybe small or powerless you may have felt at that time. And then notice that even now, when you're anxious, you may feel actually exactly the same way. You may still feel that small. You may still feel that powerless. You may still feel that overwhelmed, just like you did at that time. And then allow yourself to step out of the mindset of this child And now look at this child from the outside. Just look at the child from the outside and see who is sitting there. What facial expression does he or she have? Notice how you feel about this child. Are you feeling sad? Are you feeling somehow disconnected? Or are you feeling like, oh, I want to help him or her? Now, if this child on a subconscious level is one of the sources of your anxiety, if this is where you have learned to be anxious and see the world and see yourself the way that you're still seeing yourself, would you still have to be afraid of the anxiety? Or could you actually realize, well, I just need to help this child to understand that the anxiety actually is no longer necessary because things have changed. I'm a grown-up. I have experienced many things. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you could actually open up the world to that child to feel more safe, maybe more wanted, and giving it a sense of belonging? So just sit next to this child. Look at this child and simply tell this child that you're here. Tell this anxious child that you're here and that you are facing its fears and that you are here to give him a broader perspective, a more positive outlook on life and itself. Now listen to, maybe there is something this child is saying. Maybe there is something like a concern, the concern that recently you were facing. Maybe with the upcoming holidays, this child is saying, well, I don't want to see Uncle Sam, or I don't want to see my mom again because she's always so negative. Or maybe there's just something you may have thought now, but it could really come from the mindset of this child. And then you can ask yourself, now, does this thought really serve me? Does this thought really help me to feel better? And you would say, no, focusing on this certainly doesn't help me. Focusing on it certainly doesn't make me feel better. And then you can talk as if you talk to a child with 3 positive, counterbalancing thoughts, addressing the issue that may have come up. Maybe you can tell this child there are many other people at the gatherings. There's nothing to focus only on one. Maybe you can say to this child that this child is safe now because you are the adult and you're going to protect it. Maybe you can tell this child that it is actually nothing to take personally because the negativity of someone else is usually just a projection and has nothing to do with him or her, because this child is beautiful. This child is perfect in your eyes. Whatever it is, say it from your heart with compassion, with a caring kindness. Just like you would talk maybe to your own children. And then imagine how this feels to this child, how this child is becoming more at ease, how this child is more relaxing, how this child is maybe even more in a place of just feeling positive or understood. Just notice that there is something shifting in this child right now. And something is shifting inside of you. And then give this child a big hug. Promise this child to check in again and to not just ignore it again next time when there is an anxious thought, or next time when there is this old anxiety coming back forth. And you can just float back above this present moment, finding yourself back in that pool. And from there, take a deep breath in and exhale. And you can open your eyes. Well, good job. I can imagine for some of you it may have been a little challenging. Some of you may have found it very emotional. Some of you felt maybe that this child was not yet ready to be embraced or ready to be comforted, which is actually just a sign that there is more work that needs to be done. Now, this is just a little tiny practice, a little tiny technique that you can use when you're anxious that mainly helps you to understand, well, the root cause of the anxiety is not something that I actually have to be afraid of, but it's something that I need to understand needs some support, some guidance, some reassurance from me. I talked the other day to a client of mine who was in her mid-60s, just retired from a very high-powered job and really had been basically on the go, on the rise for all her life. When she retired, she fell almost immediately in a constant anxiety, which she couldn't really get out of it. Her life became minusculously small, and she felt more and more trapped in her emotions and more hopeless. And she couldn't understand, after everything she worked for and everything she had really accomplished, that now in these golden years, basically the time will be spoiled by the emotions. And she was very much at the end of her wits, and she was very depressed, having to deal with these anxieties. Now, what she found out when we did this exercise is that there is a part inside of her, an anxious part, that had been never really dealt with. And that anxious part of her came from her childhood, where she was sexually abused by her father for several years. But because her survival mechanism at that time was then, I need to make it on my own. I'm gonna just work harder. I'm just gonna face all obstacles, all problems head on, and I'm gonna overcome them. So she became an achiever, an overachiever, and anything that had to do with emotions, she pushed aside. And so she pushed aside also that anxious part of her that just still felt in the trauma of that abuse. The moment she switched basically out of this overachiever mode because she retired, that anxious part of her came right to the surface because she could no longer compensate with this achiever mode for her emotions, and it was staring in her face. Now, when we did this exercise, she actually really felt in tears that there is an aspect of her she had ignored for most of her life, and she now was more than willing to take care of, literally like raising her own daughter, just simply communicating once in a while, but on a daily basis, reassuring, comforting. And she did this. At the beginning, it was hard because she was a very heady person, very smart, but also someone who was very skeptical. And she told me just the other day, well, at the beginning, I didn't really know if this is going to work, but I just went for it because I had nothing to lose. Now, after a few weeks, she called me and she told me that everything is changing. She feels finally comfortable again being alone. She feels finally open again to invite friends over. She is ready to actually travel again, which she hadn't dared for almost a year now after her retirement. So things have been shifting because now when she has this anxiety that still at times appears, she knows where to go, she knows what to do, she knows who to talk to. And she told me this funny analogy, which was basically that she said one day she had been in the living room, and there was some noise in the bedroom. Something was scratching, and she was really like worried about what that could be. Is there a burglar or what's going on? So then she went finally there to the door of the bedroom, opened it, and the cat came out that she accidentally had locked in. And now she told me, well, it's the same thing. In the past, when I was anxious, I was always afraid of the anxiety itself. I always felt like, oh my God, what's going to happen when the anxiety comes up? What if it attacks me again? But now when the anxiety comes up, similar to the scratching at the door, I know what it is. I know where it comes from. And now I can just open the door of my heart, and I can address it. And I can actually give attention to that inner vulnerable part of me that never got attention. And within a few weeks of doing this, her anxiety dropped by 80%. So this is something that, again, go for it. Trust your subconscious mind. Know that your subconscious mind needs your attention in order for it to have an upgrade out of the survival mode of your early years into thriving mode of the now, which most of you probably haven't really lived in. Now, in order to really work with the subconscious mind and the root causes, maybe it's because I'm German or because I used to be a scientist, I love to work with the subconscious in a very, thorough way, in a way that is step by step, because the subconscious is something that we don't want to just meddle in. We want to really rebuild the subconscious and also release it from the old shackles of its limiting filters. And so in order to overcome fear and anxiety on that level, we need to address a few things, which are, which are the inner conflicts. Now, what are inner conflicts? Now, inner conflicts are that conflict inside that you probably have also felt at times, where there is a part of you that says, yeah, I want to have, a bigger job or a better job, or I want to go out and date again, or I want to maybe travel to Asia. But then there is the other part that holds you back, puts the brakes on, says this is not okay, this is not safe, and you find yourself in a constant back and forth. A side of you pulls you towards your dreams and desires, another part of you just wants you to be in that comfort zone that doesn't really feel that comfortable, but it may still appear safer. And that in itself, that back and forth can create a lot of friction and a lot of disharmony, and therefore a lot of anxiety inside. And that's something that needs to be resolved. Then, of course, the release of the emotional baggage. What I mean with that is that we all carry our unresolved emotions within us. Most of us haven't really learned how to release emotions. Animals do it naturally. They shake it off, they run, they use their body. But we haven't really learned that skill or retained that skill. And so most of us are just keeping their emotions inside, and especially when we're anxious. We don't feel like we want to burden others with our anxiety. We don't want to talk about it over and over again. So we just keep it for ourselves. Also, to not be looked at as weak or soft or vulnerable. And so these emotions are piling up. These emotions, like a pressure cooker, increase inside the pressure. And so what happens is, over time, the threshold to feel anxiety gets lower. When in the past, maybe we really had to have some big things happening to be anxious, now the smallest things, the smallest insecurities are creating much more an unwarranted anxiety inside of us because there is so much unresolved emotional baggage. And then there are these core beliefs. You know, when we think about the child that you just met, the core beliefs of that child are probably still within you. And those core beliefs can be beliefs such as, I'm not good enough, the world is not safe, I don't fit in, I don't belong, I can't have what I want, I'm not lovable. Things that are really deep. And because beliefs are almost like self-fulfilling prophecies, whatever we believe, we focus on, and therefore create more in our lives. If you don't feel you're good enough, and you may have had a lot of successes, but if there is one thing that goes wrong, you feel reconfirmed that you really are not good enough, and you feel this is a disaster, this is a tragedy, and everything that was actually positive, every success you had, gets simply ignored, and only the failure or what you perceive as failure gets highlighted. And so you create a reality that's very anxiety driven and certainly not very positive. And ultimately what we need to do is to rebuild a new foundation of confidence. If you, like I, have been dealing with anxiety for a long time, you know that there is not a lot of confidence inside. You know that there is not a lot of trust in yourself, trust in other people, maybe trust in God or the universe. If you deal with anxiety, you need to rebuild, not only get rid of the filters of those anxiety patterns, but you need to rebuild a foundation of confidence and self-esteem so that you can actually then carry yourself and your life with that greater foundation in much easier ways than before. So in other words, we need to outgrow fear and anxiety. Now, this is something that I'm really excited about, outgrowing fear and anxiety, because it's such a different approach to overcoming it or dealing with it or managing it. Outgrowing it basically means that there is forward movement. And if you have been dealing with anxiety and you have been learning how to outgrow it, what you will notice is that you discover more of your potential. You discover more of who you are. And for many people afterwards, it seems like that the anxiety was actually a sign of a lot of untapped potential, untapped power they never really had access to. So if you're interested to go deeper with fear and anxiety, there are many, or with resolving fear and anxiety, with outgrowing fear and anxiety, there are many things you can do. You can certainly read through my book, The Fear and Anxiety Solution. You can also sign up for individual sessions that I'm offering. And I'm also offering a 3-month webinar, a video seminar series that starts on January 16th. And this is something I feel really excited about because it gives you a hands-on, step-by-step process to go through that fear and anxiety solution, to release and change those filters, these anxiety patterns, and build that stronger foundation inside. These the seminars, they're through 3 months. You have every Saturday either a video seminar, which is 90 minutes long, or a live question and answer seminar where you can ask any questions you may have. And we're gonna go then through all of those steps. You get homework, self-empowering tools. We usually have empowerment partner meetups, which means that you get paired with another member of the fear and anxiety group that's joining for that webinar series. And then you can work together and you can do check-in calls with each other and be like accountabilities, empowerment partners for each other, which has shown in the past to be really, really effective. And often real friendships came from that place. So this is something, if you're interested, I certainly would love to offer for you. If you sign up this weekend, there is a special bonus. You will actually get an email about this, but the special bonus is that if you sign up this weekend, you don't only get the seminar $100 cheaper, it's usually $595. You would get it for $495. You also get a laser breakthrough session with me, an individual laser breakthrough session, which can only help you on this process. Now, I would love to hear if you have any questions, any comments. You can actually chat, as far as I know, with the chatting box that should be appearing on the right side. If there are any questions, please type them in. I should have told you earlier, but now just let me know, and hopefully we'll get some questions asked. Just looking here. Excellent. So there were actually some questions already. I hope it's okay. One second. So it went back and forth. Greetings from Finland. That is very nice. I would like to know the technique for alpha state of mind. Well, that's an interesting one. The alpha state of mind, the alpha state is actually the state where you are able to connect to your subconscious mind without feeling that your conscious mind is really out of the way. You know, sometimes people want to go in a deeper state, like a theta state, where they're almost feeling asleep. This is what happens in deep hypnosis. And it's certainly effective, but I find the alpha state more effective because it allows you to consciously be aware of what actually the subconscious mind is doing. And so this alpha state can be reached by something we did today, a simple visualization, a place where you go inside and you imagine things that really touch you, not only imagining them in your head, but letting them actually your entire body get into it. Now, other alpha states, of course, during meditation, where you are focusing on your sensation, where you're widening your awareness away from that being mostly with your awareness here to being in your body sensation, focusing your breath, focusing on your breath, things like that. So these are all ways to get into an alpha state. And it's a very healthy state. In fact, I learned that whales are spending most of their times in alpha state. They don't need a lot of sleep because that alpha state is very rejuvenating and something that you know, can be then also sustained for a long time to make you feel better. So let's see here, what else do I have? It was important for me to talk to the child, to take the child out of the bedroom, down to the stairs and out of the house, to go with me and to be safe. That's a very good suggestion, because some people may actually feel, you know, that this is not a safe place in this house. I want this child actually now with me, and I want this child to be a part of my life and my heart, and not something that is still somewhere in the past. And that's certainly something you can do. This is something we do also in the webinars or in the individual sessions, because, you know, ultimately this part of you will, while you are outgrowing fear and anxiety, an integral part of your awareness. Now, some people say, do I have to raise this child now until, you know, another 20 years until it's grown up, and it's too much work, I don't really have time for that? And it's not that hard. First of all, usually it's when you are really taking care and supporting that inner child, it doesn't take more than 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day to do so in order to already make a positive impact. Plus, once you do it for a while and you're resolving that inner conflict that I mentioned, it will actually become more and more an integrated part of you that doesn't need so much attention. For me, for example, after I was able to integrate this inner child, it only shows up in certain situations. And then I know the sensation, I know the thoughts, then it's time to really address and take care of this part of me, but it's not any longer necessary to do this on a daily basis. So no worries about that. Let's see if there are anything else. I think this were all the questions I could see for right now. Now, I really enjoyed having you on this call. It would be wonderful to continue to work with you. I hope I have left you with a sense of hope. I know there are people that feel very deflated because of fear and anxiety, and they feel there is not a lot of hope, and they feel very limited in their possibilities, and they just feel like they are in this constant imprisonment. And I have deepest compassion for them. But it's also important to know that fear and anxiety are not your enemy. They're not trying to torture you. They're not trying to hold you hostage. They're only trying to get your attention. And I mentioned this before as the analogy to pain. When we do have pain, we don't just ignore the pain. We actually wonder, where does the pain come from? What does it actually mean? Why does my tummy ache? Is there maybe something wrong with my digestion or my appendix? Why does my foot ache? Did I injure it somewhere? Now, when the emotions ache, when fear and anxiety causes you pain, there is a reason to it. There is something inside of you that wants your attention. There is something inside of you that needs to be healed, and something inside of you that wants you, and this is very often the case, wants you to open your heart towards yourself. Because when we feel fear and anxiety, most of the times, we actually don't only close our hearts to the world around, to somehow block it off and wall it off and feel somehow safer. We also close our hearts towards ourselves. We don't accept us, we don't embrace us, and we certainly don't love us. And so that is one of those beautiful things about working with the fear and anxiety solutions, that you will learn to open your heart more to yourself. And when you do, you will also feel the more you embrace and accept yourself, the less fear and anxiety you will have. So thank you for taking the time. It was really a great pleasure. I hope we will continue to work together. It would be wonderful to have you on the seminar that starts on January 16, or to talk to you in the future if you are choosing to do individual work with me. If you have any questions, please feel free to email info@thefearandanxietysolution.com. I'm always happy to hear from you. And again, thank you very much, and I wish you all the best. Take care.